So Justine Armstrong runs a business called Fearless Speaking, and she helps people become fantastic public speakers. And it comes from, tell us a little bit about why you decided to get into this line of business.
I'm really happy to be here. So how did I get started with this? Well, look, to be honest, I'm a psychologist, I'm an educator. I've always had a passion for helping people transform from where they are to where they want to be. And I ended up getting all sorts of different jobs in my early 20s and 30s. All of them required me to speak in front of a group at some level. And all of them made me feel terrible. I just, it was a terrible fear of public speaking that I had. I was chronically shy. I was average at best, and I'm a perfectionist. So that was, not good for me at all. And I really struggled, and I got to the point where I actually gave a shocking presentation due to nerves. It was terrible by any objective standards. It was humiliating. And I came out of that and I just said to myself, I'm never going through that again. I can never feel that again. And so I thought, well, if I'm going to do something about this, and I am going to do something about this, so I'm going to learn from someone, may as well learn from the creme de la creme in the world. This is my perspective at age 23. And so I did. I actually started to learn from some of the creme de la creme in the world of coaching, leadership, public speaking, presentation. And I did that for a decade, hundreds of thousands of hours, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I got to the end of all that, and I had some skills, and I definitely developed in some ways, but I still felt bad on the inside. And that meant I couldn't be spontaneous. I couldn't really deliver anything that did my audience justice or myself. And so I decided that I was either a lost cause or I was going to do the exact opposite of what everyone else was saying to do, right? So I thought, if I'm going to do the opposite, I better think the opposite. So I started to just play around, and all to say, I then created a sort of a process, I guess, for myself, and I took myself through it. And lo and behold, about 3 weeks later, I was presenting at one of Australia's most prestigious universities, and in front of about 300 business leaders, 20-minute piece on leadership. And I had a number of them pretty much running to me on stage at the end of it, saying, oh my God, you've changed my business, my whole perspective on my business, changed my life. It was really incredible. And I drove away from that on cloud 9, feeling like, wow, I've made a really great impact on these people. But actually I realized that I had felt no nerves at all.
Yeah. From
the beginning. Sorry, my hair keeps flipping in my face. I don't want people to think I've only got one eye. I just realized no nerves from the beginning of planning the presentation to doing it to after. And from that point, all sorts of opportunities kept coming my way. I was speaking on larger and larger stages, 1,000 people plus. And people were just coming up to me saying, how the hell have you done this? You used to be a nervous wreck. Could you please teach us how you've managed to get from where you are? You're nailing it. You're comfortable on stage with some of the world's top leadership experts. Can you teach us? And that's really how Fearless Speaking was born.
So it's interesting because I know I'm very scared of public speaking too. And as a natural introvert, and I was quite shy too as a child, and I think that doesn't help. For me, it was like there was a big fear of, and I think part of it came from, I'm thinking about why was I so scared about it, is I think back to, I had to sit through a speech day every year at school. At the end of every year, they made us sit through speech day. I don't know why they called it speech day.
Yeah.
It was like, the day reports and stuff, but they'd get some luminary to come and give a speech, and usually it went for an hour and it was boring, and it was very irrelevant to us as school kids too. I think it was not the right place to do this, but I remember being bored out of my brain by all these speeches, and so for me, thinking about getting up and speaking in public was, I don't want to bore people. Like that was my big fear, is like thinking that I have sat through boring speech after boring speech. I do not want to bore people. So that was my fear. And I know, there's lots of different fears. So what are some of the other fears that people have?
Do you mean about speaking or
Yeah,
just
about
in
why
general?
is public speaking considered to be like the fear next to death? You know, like
Yeah, exactly. You know, like Seinfeld said, Jerry Seinfeld, in one of his stand-up routines, he said, you know, most people, if they go to a funeral, they'd rather be in the casket than delivering the eulogy.
Yeah.
And, you know, exactly how I felt, exactly I think how most people feel. And in fact, I was surprised to learn at the beginning of this journey of really looking into this for myself. I was surprised to learn that 75% of the population feel the same way.
Yeah.
It's not just a select group of people. Some people hide it very well.
Yeah.
Some of my clients are CEOs of $100 million companies, and if you met them, you would think, wow, they are so confident, and they are. But when it comes to speaking in front of a group, they were a nervous wreck.
Yeah. So
there's
like, you know, me, which was like, I don't want to bore people. What are the other fears? Like, why are we so scared of it?
Yeah. So look, ultimately, the umbrella thing, in my point of view, from my point of view, is that we just don't want to feel bad, and we anticipate that something bad is going to happen, whether, like in your case and millions of others, you know, oh my God, what if I bore people? But actually, what's underneath that? So as a psychologist, you know, I have to go underneath everything. So, you know, what's underneath? Well, imagine if you did bore everyone. What would that feel like? Well, maybe you would feel sort of less than, or you'd feel like you'd failed, or you'd feel like, you know, you didn't do as well as you could, or there'll be a feeling underneath that fear of boring people. So underneath all of it is a fear of something going wrong, which results in feeling bad in some way. And for different people, that will vary. So for some people, you know, it's a fear of other people's judgment, or it's a fear of failure, but underneath there'll be a certain emotion or certain emotions. It's different for each person. And usually what I help people do is actually excavate underneath and underneath. I'm not talking about psychoanalysis.
No.
We don't need to do that. Not into that at all. But we do need to understand and identify what is the driver underneath that. And it's different for different people. But so sometimes I just say that people have a fear of the fear, you know, because they don't want to think, oh my God, I'm going to bore people. Oh my God, it's going to be terrible. And so there's this state that people work themselves up into, which just is understandable but not helpful.
Yeah. So have you got any tips? Like, I mean, is it worthwhile working out what that fear is? Like, what is your fear? Like, I went to a friend and she was saying that her fear is about being kind of seen as incompetent, not being able to think, like just like, so no words will come to together, can't get a sentence out. You know, like, so there's a fear of incompetence, fear of, I suppose, embarrassing yourself. A lot of people are feared about, you know, feeling like, looking like they are a bit hopeless in some way or other.
Yeah, look, definitely. And, you know, there's so many answers to this question, actually. And in fact, it will probably be helpful. Are people making comments on this now? Because it might be helpful if I can follow along.
Pop up, so I assume they'll actually pop up on the screen.
Okay,
make a comment.
that's right. Sorry, I just wanted to I didn't want to be missing out if someone was wanting had a request. So can you just say that again? Sorry.
So if, like, people, is it worthwhile working out what our fear is, or just going, there's some fear of feeling bad, like, you know, like, so we need to then work out how to not feel that way? Like, what's the solution to this?
Got it. Yeah, look, it's such a great question. And I think what I've found is that there's so much misinformation about how to get over fear of public speaking. And partly, I think we've got, you know, Dr. Google to thank for that. And while Google is amazing and wonderful and incredible breadth and width and depth of resources, the bottom line is what Google tells us is, well, we're under the misapprehension that information can fix this. And really could spend 7 lifetimes on Google researching fear of public speaking and just not get there. And the other myth is that, you know, tips and tricks, you know, people say, oh, the 10 tips to public speaking and, you know, how to get over your fear in 10 easy steps. And from my perspective, it's not actually hard to get over the fear of public speaking, but to be honest, it's not going to happen in just 3 tips. I can help people expand their understanding in a call like this. And I'm certainly happy, and I will answer your question in the way that I can in this context. But it would be like sort of going to a 5-star restaurant and just saying to the chef, look, I've got about 3 minutes. Can you just teach me how to make this dish? And meanwhile, it's taken that chef like 30 years, and what ingredients and how you've got to prepare them for a week. And so it's a bit like that. There is a recipe for this. And yes, one of the steps is excavating and understanding what is driving and what is underneath that fear. And there's a way to do that. I guess, this process is what I teach my clients. But then there's other things as well, because most of the people that I work with are perfectionists like me, or, what I call myself, a recovering perfectionist.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so they've got very high standards for themselves. They want to be excellent. They don't just want to be average. And so it's not just about getting over the fear, because let's face it, there are a lot of very confident people that are speaking, but would we buy from them? Would we want to be coached by them? So a lot of people just come and they go, I just want confidence. I'm great at everything else. And they probably are. But the thing about being confident is you need to know in your bones, in your cells, that you have something to offer that is so valuable, that is so useful and constructive for people that they wouldn't want to go anywhere else. But you have to also convey that in such a way that they see that. They see what you see, they hear what you hear, they get what you get. And just by being confident, it's only a tiny bit of the recipe. There's other elements that must happen at the same time if you want that enduring confidence.
Yeah.
And so one of those, go on. Sorry, when
an old tip of like, imagine everybody naked is just, it's like an old wives' tale, doesn't really work.
Well, you know what? We could do a poll. How many of you have ever tried to imagine your audience naked, and did it work to reduce your fear of public speaking? I would think not only did it not reduce people's fear of public speaking, they probably went into trauma and probably needed therapy to recover from that experience. But yeah, there are so many myths about public speaking and the fear of it, and most of them don't work. And that's why 40 years on from this whole concept of public speaking, most people are still suffering, because practice doesn't make perfect. That's another myth. I hear people say to me that, people that come to me that want to work with me, and they say, oh, look, I know, I just need more practice. And I say, well, actually, no. Because why? If you practice the wrong thing over and over and over again, you're just going to get really good at doing something that doesn't work.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying practice isn't helpful. Of course it is, but you want to be practicing something that is going to get the results, that is going to captivate people and engage them and get the buy-in. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, you're practicing the right things. It's like, if you're learning any skill, like if you were learning some sport move or dance move, and if you are practicing the wrong way, you're just going to be embedding that in instead of practicing the right way. And then you've got to unlearn something before you can learn something else. So what are the other common myths that we have with about public speaking?
Okay. So one of them is there's this myth. It's really funny, people come to me and go, I don't know what to do with my hands. I just, when I'm talking, I don't know what to do with my hands. And there's this myth that if you learn these sort of skills, tips and tricks and skills, and, there's 4 bazillion workshops on there, public speaking skills and presentation skills, and you just learn what to do with your hands, or how to project your voice, or how to move on stage, and that will fix everything. And can I just say, I don't really think anyone actually cares what you're doing with your hands. I don't really think that when Martin Luther delivered his I Have a Dream speech, that anyone was actually thinking, gee, I liked how he moved his hands in that speech. That was, he did that sort of thing like that. It was really powerful. Like, no one is thinking about his hands, right? It's just that you as the person speaking feeling uncomfortable, that's why people are worried about their hands. So there's a big myth that, you've got to have sort of body language, and you've got to have a voice you've got to sort of look and sound a certain way. And I think that is the biggest unhelpful myth for anyone that has any degree of hesitation around public speaking, because they're focusing on the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And the right thing, in my point of, from my point of view, is how do you actually feel comfortable in your own body when you're speaking? Because you know what, we're just talking now.
Yes.
Neither of us are sitting there thinking, gosh, shall I move my hand this way? Maybe I should look up to that direction. Like, we're just talking. We're comfortable. And even the most introverted people, which I was, and that's who I work with for the majority of my clients that are introverted, when they're having coffee with their best friend or they're talking to their partner, no one's sitting on the couch sharing about their day going, oh gosh, did I move my hand in the right direction? Oh, maybe I didn't project enough. They're just in the mind. Yeah. You know, so that's exactly right. We don't think about that when we're comfortable. I would much rather my clients feel comfortable on stage or on Zoom or on a Facebook Live. Just feel comfortable.
Yeah.
That's much more important than how you look, how you know, what you're doing with your hands, how you're articulating your vowels. Really, you know, everything does work together. Like, of course, you know, if you look, if you're projecting a certain image, and of course that's your expertise, which I clearly need help with, having just jumped out of the shower because it's early in the morning from my point of view. But you know, you want the package, you want everything. When you're presenting to people, you do want to look a certain way that your audience will either relate to or engage with. You want to sound a certain way. So there are all these elements, and the biggest myth is that you have to worry about your hands or all that other stuff. Just priority, get comfortable in your own skin, and most of that starts in your head.
I think it's like, I think about, because I spent years being scared of public speaking. I never got up in front of people, and I spent like many years as a publicist behind the people being interviewed. Like, you know, I was always the person in the background, never wanted to be interviewed, never wanted to be the person in the front. And I, you know, moved on from that, and I did a job where I had to go and do some training on facilitation techniques to become a facilitator. And one of the things we had to do, maybe it was a 3-day course, and it was probably about the third day, and they said, what's your greatest fear, sort of thing. And I just went, like, boring people, because that was my thing. I was like, I hate to bore people. And the entire group of people who I had never met till like 2 days earlier, these are all people I did not know, turned around and went, that's never going to happen. And that was, so from that, it was almost like that just disappeared for me. The minute they said, that's never going to happen, don't worry about it, I just went, oh, this group of people who don't know me say I don't bore you. So I stopped worrying about it. And so it's been much easier ever since. But it's not like, you know, it's really simple necessarily. But I certainly have got rid of that fear. Which maybe it's
such a relief.
Yeah. And I think, and one of the other things I'll notice, particularly for myself, is like, it's much easier to talk about something I know about than something I don't know about. So I always think if you're in your area of expertise, then it becomes much easier. And
it does.
You know, watching other people is, on the whole, we're rooting for you. Like, on the whole, we don't want people to fail. We don't want them to perform poorly. But if they do make mistakes, most people go, you know, that's okay. And that just shows you're human, and it's all okay. And actually knowing, like, even I think one of the things can be worthwhile doing is when you're watching somebody else speaking, is actually thinking, am I wanting them to fail? Am I, you know, like, checking out like what their hand's doing, or like judging them in that way? Or I'm actually just wanting them to do well. And if they do make a mistake, do I go, oh my gosh, that's it, I don't believe a word they've said? Or do I go, oh, they're a human and it's okay? And in fact, in some ways, sometimes making a mistake can make you more likable, I think.
I definitely agree. And this whole goal of perfection is just not helpful. And none of us wants to see a robot on stage that has no emotion, that's not sort of human. We don't want that. And so I think the day of the perfectionist sort of presenter, the polished, you know, immaculate, I call it the immaculate presenter, meaning sort of artificial, but is over. But what is that anyway? People's idea of perfect doesn't actually exist. It's just something in your own mind, right? And so I agree with you. People are much more comfortable with someone who makes a mistake, but who's genuine and who's giving them some value, than someone who's up there like a robot. And, you know, there's two things I want to say about that. I think we are generous as human beings, but I also think we're stressed, and we have limits on our time and our energy. And I think most of us, and, you know, I'm sure the people watching this will probably agree, and, you know, I'd love to know if that's the case, but you've probably been sitting in an audience at some point in time, or at a meeting or in a conference, whatever it is, and been listening to someone speak, and you've been sitting there and their mouth is moving and you're sitting there thinking, oh, what should I have for dinner? Should I do the rice, or should I do... Right, and your mind's wandering, because it's not because you're not being generous or nice to them and wanting them to fail. It's just because they're not attracting you in the way they're speaking or what they're saying. And so, like anything, there's a recipe. You know, like in what you do, like what you do is an art and a science, like the way that you can help people just, I want to say vibrate, but become more vibrant in their own personality and how they express that. They're not changing themselves. They don't have to turn themselves into anything, but they're just becoming more of who they are. And you've got like a system that you help people assess, you know, which sort of where they slot into and what colors are going to work best for them and what sort of shapes. There's a system, and I don't know that system yet. I've got a sense of it, right? But I need to learn that system in order for me to really, you know, open that up for myself. And most things are very similar. You've unpacked that. I've unpacked the speaking aspect, so that when you know, the people I work with, when they get on stage or they get on Zoom or they know without a shadow of a doubt that when they start speaking, firstly, they're going to feel great, because I believe we are all designed to feel fabulous speaking in front of any group, but they're also going to know that they can actually have their own needs and wants met as they're speaking, but also meet the needs and wants of their audience. And that's really what brings about the confidence. So, you know, there's I think in most things in life, if you're going to be successful in any degree, then there's usually some sort of recipe or system that can help you get there. I was floundering for 30 years with no system, you know, spending time and money whither and thither, and, you know, wasting all of it. And luckily I just sort of came across this system for myself. And it's like a recipe. If you go into a, you know, an amazing restaurant and you taste something, you think, oh my God, this is amazing, I want to make this when I get home. But you don't know what are the ingredients. You know, let's say it's a chocolate cake, to be silly. Let's say you never even heard of chocolate. Well, how are you possibly going to go home and make that? Right. But if someone writes out, well, these are the ingredients you need to go and buy. This is the way you've got to mix them and cut them, chop them and put them in the oven at this temperature, then it's actually not really generally that hard, right?
Yeah.
So that's how I see it.
So are there any kind of, like, I know we can't give everybody a full recipe, but just a quick tip or two, like that if somebody does have to get up and do something, or even just speaking, and they find that really stressful, is there anything that can help ease that stress?
Look, I think the first thing to do is remember something that I'll share with you, a story by way of answering this, because it's what actually shifted a lot of things for me. I've always really respected Oprah Winfrey, even when it was very unpopular to admit that you liked Oprah Winfrey. Like in the mid-'80s when she started her show, it was in the popular culture, she was very much dismissed. And I just thought her role in the world and her kindness network and angel network, I just thought it was phenomenal. Anyway, so I had this reverence for her, and I heard her being interviewed one time when my fear and anxiety was really shocking. And the interviewer said to her, Oprah, what are you thinking? What's going through your mind as you're out on stage? You know, millions of people are listening to you. And she said, you know, every day I go through exactly the same ritual. Come out of my office, I step in the elevator, I come down, it's a 15-minute ride down, and then I come on stage. And she said, every single time I step in the elevator, I think the same thought. And it was something along the lines of something like, Lord, please use me as an instrument, or something probably that sounded a lot better than that. Now, I'm not religious. I don't particularly relate to the term Lord. All that's not relevant. But it was something like the lights flashed, the heavens opened up, and I thought, oh my gosh, she's not thinking about her clothes, her weight, her makeup, her hair, her, she's not worried about that. All she's concerned about is, can I be of service?
Yes.
And I suddenly thought to myself, oh my God, Justine, you've been so consumed and obsessed with yourself, how you sound, how you look, what people think of you. I just thought, it's not about me.
Yeah.
It's not about me. And really, at the very fundamental level, if you are speaking to anyone, if you can come from a place of service to them, how can I serve my audience?
Yeah.
And even if that's just the only thought that you think, how can I serve them? You might not have an answer immediately, but the way you think about what you say is going to be very different. And I could go into the psychology of why that works. There's all sorts of reasons why that starts to shift everything. Look, there's a billion tips. So we could be on here for 5 hours and I say, and do this, and do this. Ultimately, though, if you don't have the foundation,
yes,
if you haven't set the foundation for the fear and the nerves, I can give you any tips. It's not really necessarily going to be, it's not going to do you the biggest justice. It's like, let's say you want to build a beautiful house and you're going, I need a stained glass window.
Yeah.
I've just got to have a stained glass window. But meanwhile, there's no foundation. There's no, beams anywhere. So it's sort of landing a bit on nothing. But if you can just start to think of your audience before yourself, you put your brain in a slightly really different state. And that can help. So that's one thing that you can do.
Yeah.
So is that useful?
Yeah, I think it is. And it's something I was actually listening to an interview. I think it was with Simon Sinek the other day. And he talks, and he talks about how often thinking about what we're doing things for, like what's the motivation in many ways. It's like, what's our purpose? Why are we going out there? How are we helping people? When you can, like, we're doing this for, who was he interviewing? He was interviewing a woman. I'm trying to remember, who helped, I don't know, like some sort of women's rights sort of thing. And she said, like, I'm doing this for my mother and my grandmother who never had this opportunity. So it's like having that thought in there of like, who am I doing it for? It's much greater than me. This is not about me. This is about doing it for the other women who to have the opportunity so that they can get out there and they can have a better life rather than just going, I'm just doing it, like, because then I think that takes the focus off you, doesn't it?
It does. And I love that. And look, there's so many different ways of thinking. And ultimately, that's really the crux of this.
Yeah.
It's a lot of people think that public speaking is about what you say.
Yes.
I actually believe it's more about how you think about what you say on every level. And it's really about being willing to shift your thinking in a slightly different direction. And so any way that you can do that is going to be helpful. There's so many things that people can do, but I think understanding there's a foundation, there's a system, but also just try and change one thing.
Yeah.
A lot of people, they go, well, what are all the tips and tricks? Tell me 10 things, but you can't implement 10 things at a time. But one you can implement. If I say, you know what, I'll tell you one other thing.
Yeah.
Just shorten it down.
Yes.
If you want to say something, if you're doing a speech or a session or a Q&A or you're on a panel, just whatever you want to say it in less time with less words.
Mm-hmm.
Because people, and I'm guilty of this, and look, I've made every mistake in the book a billion times over, but a lot of people will just keep talking and talking, and it doesn't really impact the audience to hear the same thing over and over and over again, but with none of the meat, or none of the juice. So I'll just share a quote with you that I love, and then that's probably enough. Don't want to overload everyone, but there's a quote from Mark Twain, who's a famous American writer who I just I love a lot of his perspective on things. And he was a writer in the time where there's no email, no computers, no any of that. You had to write a physical letter, and it had to get sent by ship to the other country, let's say.
It took a long.
And it took a long time. Can you imagine? 5 weeks in our brain is like about 7 years, I think, now, because everything's got to be instant. So he wrote to this friend. His first line was in much more formal language than what I'm going to say, but the gist of it was, I'm so sorry that I did not have time to write a shorter letter. I love that.
Yes.
Yeah. because people think it takes more time to talk for longer. Actually, it doesn't.
Yeah.
It's if you can be really succinct and say what you want to say in the most economical way, that's where your power is, and that's where your impact lies.
Yeah.
So I think that's a valuable tip.
As my friend Sarah says, be bold, be brilliant, be done.
And she's clearly taking her own advice.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
There's
Anyway.
often too much waffle, particularly at the start of things. That's one of the things I notice, like, get to the point.
Yeah, exactly. I'll just share this one thing, and then I think, you know, we've probably overloaded everyone, and we don't want them to go, oh, we're so bored. I'll just tell you this, you know, I enrolled in this online program about a month ago. It was led by this guy who's supposedly, you know, one of he's trained all the A-listers in sales, online sales. And I thought, oh, you know, I'm always enrolling in everything. I always want to check stuff out. So I thought, oh, I'll see what he does. So I enrolled. It was a 5-hour workshop. I thought, wow, this is amazing. It was free. I thought, oh,
yeah.
I said it. I cancelled everything. I just made the space for it. Got online. They're ready. You know, he said, you're going to learn how to sell from stage. And I thought, brilliant.
Yeah.
All right, let's see what he does. I'm on there. This video comes up.
Yeah.
You'll think I'm exaggerating. I'm not exaggerating. 9 minutes, 9 of testimonials.
Yeah.
From 20, 30 years ago, even, all squished together. So all we were listening to for 9 minutes, and think about 9, it doesn't sound like long, but when you're listening to, you know, it was the best program I've ever done.
Yeah.
I loved it. 9 minutes of that. Then he got on and he said something like, I'm not exaggerating again, something like, welcome to everyone from Canada and everyone from around the world. Some people, and I'm speaking in fast forward version, this took a lot longer because he talked really slowly. Some people will be late, and that's a shame, because, and honestly, that went for another 9 minutes.
Yeah.
Right? It's exactly what you're saying. You know, give me the juice. Like, imagine going into a sandwich shop and someone says, what sandwich do you want? And you go, well, you know, on Tuesday I quite like the roast beef, and I like a bit of lettuce, depends what mustard, and I can't have that bread because, you know, my gut is playing up a bit, and, you know, just tuna mayo.
Yeah.
tell me the sandwich. You know, I don't need the whole. So I think that sums it up pretty well. But so look, you know, the bottom line is there is a foundation for this. As with everything, there is a system, but the bottom line is, if you can just think of who you're speaking to and what they need and want, and, you know, work out how best to communicate to, you know, give them what they need and want, have you achieve what you need and want, and do it succinctly. If you can just start thinking about that, you're definitely on the right track.
That's fantastic. Well, thanks so much, Justine.
You're welcome.
I think it's like, and it's so important because, you know, there's so many times where it's a funeral, as you mentioned, or just a meeting at work, or any kind of time, we can often get in our own way for public speaking. And I think that's part of learning, you know, to do it, is to get out of your own way, and think about what am I getting out there, and, you know, what's the easiest, fastest way of doing that. So yeah, it's been a pleasure having you.
So
I can find you at fearlessspeaking.com. Is it .com or .com?
.com.au. Yeah, absolutely. And I've got a free masterclass on there for people who are sort of ready to start, you know, moving into that direction. And a lot of people realize these days, it just doesn't matter how great you are in your business, if you can't communicate that and leverage your time and your energy so that instead of just spending an hour talking to one person, you're speaking to 100. A lot of people realize that the degree to which you can do that is really the degree to which you can make an impact with more people, build your business faster, and all those sorts of things. So yeah, there's a free class if people that are watching would like to do that. And it's been fun chatting. We should do it again. Look, you know, I can just talk for hours, as you can probably see. And I hope that it's been helpful, though, community.
I'm sure it has been, because I think we all have to get up and speak somewhere, and sometimes, you know, so it's a useful skill to have in this day and age. Especially
it is
more and more of this kind of online as well, because the same, you know, the same kind of things apply, whether it's online. I mean, I think about a year ago, I had never done a Facebook Live, you know, by myself sort of thing. And I remember thinking, like, it took me a lot of mental headspace to get over myself to just start doing them. Now I don't even think about it. It's so easy. But, you know, it's amazing how we can put up all sorts of barriers and we can stop ourselves just from having these stupid little fears that are actually not helping us. And I understand, like, the whole point of a fear is to stop us getting eaten by the lion, but seriously, we're unlikely to get eaten by a lion public speaking.
Yeah.
Thanks for your time today, Justine. It's been a pleasure, and I'll be back and chatting to you all again soon. Bye for now.